And welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me tonight is Ross Grimsley. And Ross, last week you had technical problems. This week, Dave Tremblay from his hometown in, I think it's Georgia, he's having some technical problems. So we decided to just do a two-man show today.
Perfect.
All right?
You got it, buddy. You got it.
Hey, first of all, you and Bird have a good Thanksgiving?
Great Thanksgiving. I mean, our kids, my daughter was able to make it over. My son and his family couldn't due to the COVID thing. I mean, it's something that that's what people are doing now. You just got to be really careful and be as safe as you can. And that's what we decided to do.
Same here. My wife and I just were together, and that was it. I think, look, people are going to do what they're going to do, but I think by now we know that this thing is like a wildfire. So I just urge everybody to put their masks on, wash those hands, and try and stay socially distant. And we'll talk a little baseball now, all right?
Really? Absolutely.
Hey, the Orioles sort of had to come up with their 40-man roster last week, Ross. And you saw the names, Zach Lowther, Michael Bellman, Yusniel Diaz was one of them. I guess the big surprise is they opted to keep Rylan Bannon, the infielder we picked up in the Machado trade, and did not keep or reserve, put him on the 40-man roster, Zach Pop, who probably was the highest rated of those prospects when the trade went down. I mean, closest to the majors back then, and now he's had Tommy John surgery. Do you think they run the risk of another team, maybe the Dodgers that know him well,
or
somebody that may get hired, somebody else in the next week or so when the Rule 5 draft is there, maybe some ex-Dodger executive is GM somewhere else?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it is, 40-man roster, you got to expose some guys at times. You can't, obviously there's not enough room for everybody, which you wish you could, but it's a crapshoot. And a lot of times, especially a guy coming off of Tommy John surgery and watching him pitch, he's a little erratic, good arm. I mean, that's there. Most guys got good arms now. It's a matter of being able to throw strikes and quality pitches. But he's a guy that, like I said, coming off Tommy John, usually guys come back. It takes probably 2 years to fully get it back together, some a little bit earlier, depending on the guy. But he's someone that, they chose to, protect some other people, and it's just a chance you take. And that was something that they think, hopefully, maybe that the Tommy John surgery scared some teams away.
Yeah, and the fact that he didn't get a chance to really come back and pitch against minor league competition. Right. He just performed a little bit at the alternate site. One move, and it did not surprise me, but I'm sure a lot of people are out there and go, what are the Orioles doing? They don't have that many good players. And Renato Nunez led them in home runs and RBIs, and they kept him off the 40-man roster.
Right.
I sort of saw that coming with Mancini due to be back.
Yep.
The uncertainty around Chris Davis still there until we know what kind of schedule we're going to have this year. Did leaving Renato Nunez off surprise you much?
Not really. I mean, you got to have defense. I mean, pitching has always been pitching and defense are two things that are going to win championships. And the Orioles aren't there yet. They're closing in on it. Who knows when? But your defense has got to get better. The Orioles have had some problems, at third, at second, in the outfield, in the corners. It's something. I mean, when Santander's back, and an injury situation has been tough for the Orioles too.
Yep.
If they can keep guys on the field. And that's been something in baseball, and we said this earlier in the year, especially at one point in time, there were 200 pitchers that were either opted out, got hurt, or weren't able to perform. So that is something that was really an issue. And plus the injury to the players. There's over 100 players that couldn't play. There's only a 60-game season. So what does that tell you? But, Nunez is a guy that he's going to hit some home runs defensively. At third base, he's adequate at best, but he's a guy who's going to play first base. They have a ton of first basemen, Mancini coming back. That's somewhere. You got
he figures to play much more first base.
Yeah.
Here than an outfield.
So now what do you do with Mountcastle? You're going to put him at DH. He's a first baseman. The thing what he improved most in, and I was kind of surprised that going to spring training, they put him at third, they put him at first. He improved more in left field than anywhere else.
He looked like a perfectly adequate left fielder, I think his speed, tracking down balls and running to first base was a little surprising to a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah. No, and here's a guy that now what do you do? Now, barring what do you do with Chris Davis? He's got the contract, and I don't know if they're going to do anything with him. Who knows? But if you want some of these young players to play, you're going to have to, he's clogging up a spot. And there's guys that need to play, especially now with the no minor league season last year. And they're just getting, at the complex in Bowie. That's, okay, but that's not what you want. You want competition. You want against other players. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we dig into what I think is an interesting topic for us to delve into tonight is compare notes, you and I, on what we think the 2021 season and spring training will look like. But before we do that, the Orioles also by this Wednesday now have another date. They have 3 players that they need to tender a contract to,
right,
or else they can become free agents. And the 3 of them are Pedro Severino, scheduled by arbitration to make, I think, $1.4 million this coming season. I think Hanser Alberto is like around 2.1 or 2.4 million.
Yep.
And then the third is Shawn Armstrong at $800,000.
The bargain.
So, what's your thought? I mean, I'll give you my opinion right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think Yomer Sanchez is now going to play second base for the Orioles, and he's going to make about $1.2 million less than Hanser Alberto. So I think Alberto's going to be gone from the Orioles. And I think Pedro Severino, as good as he looks at times, he offensively ended the season horribly this year.
Yeah.
But I think one thing, his most consistent thing, is his erraticness as a defender.
Right.
I don't think he helps his pitching staff at all, and I don't think they're going to pay him $1,400,000. Ross?
No, absolutely not. I mean, he's a guy that at times, and you got the guys at times all year, and even 2019, guys look good, but as the season progressed, that's just like last year. The last 19 games, the Orioles were, I think they were 5-14. So as the season progresses, they get exposed. And I mean, these guys were, they're here with the Orioles. They come different ways. But and now we're starting to see some influx of the minor league guys coming up and showing some promise. They're going to have to get a chance to play. But yeah, it's Hanser Alberto can hit left-handers as good as anybody. But he's adequate at second base, adequate at third base, and we need defense. The defense, the pitching is the big thing. Pitching and defense is going to be the cornerstone of a championship team, and hopefully at some point in time in the future, the Orioles will be that. So here's a guy, Sanchez is. I mean, he's a guy that's going to be up. He may not.
He's a former Gold Glove winner. Yeah.
So, I mean, third base is another spot. Catching, we're going to have to get a catcher that can handle the staff.
So let me ask you a question. I got a chance, and I play fantasy baseball. So I've owned Mike Zunino a couple times. I don't really like him as an offensive player. He's going to run in a 162 game season. He'll run into 10 or 12 home runs, but he's going to hit you about 185.
Yeah.
And, he's not going to be productive. But I got a chance to really watch him during the playoffs this year almost every day. I'm watching Tampa play, and I watched what he did to that pitching staff. Am I right? You pitched to Johnny Bench, right?
Him and Carter.
Yeah, they were your catchers.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what a defensive catcher. And I don't just mean whether he can block balls and keep from a wild pitch. I mean how he can, almost like a jockey rides a horse. A good catcher rides a pitching staff, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, you got to, you want to get on the same page mentally with your catcher, so he can. I mean, you don't want to shake off. I mean, the games are long enough now and there's no flow. The length of the game is no big deal. It's the flow of the game, and if you're shaking and stepping off, that's a pain. But the other thing is you want a catcher you can depend on, not only to call a good game, but to be able to block balls in the dirt. You want to get guys to chase, and if your catcher can't block balls. But the other thing is and you watch the Oriole pitchers, they throw a lot of pitches per plate appearance. It used to be 3 or less. Now it's close to 4 or more. And some of the pitches are so you don't miss by inches; they're missing by feet. So I mean, your catcher's like a goalie back there at times. Try to just block. And a lot of the technique, Cisco's a guy. He'll start. Some guys, they can go early in the game, and as the game progresses, they get a little tired. They get a little, they don't move as much. They start reaching for balls. That's a big thing. You see guys reaching for balls instead of sliding over and trying to block them. That's a sure case of a big problem right there.
So if the Orioles could somehow swing it to make a bid, and with the money they might save from Nunez, the money they might save from Alberto and Severino, and maybe get Zunino for a 1-year deal or 1 year and an option at $2 and $3 million, would you think he would add something to this pitching staff?
Oh, absolutely. And who knows, playing in Camden Yards, he might hit some home runs. I mean, that's pretty, guys can do that.
He's got good power when he makes contact.
Exactly. But I think the Orioles probably have enough offense. If the pitching continues to improve a little bit, like I think it did last year, some small steps. But pitching Camden Yards is a very tough thing to do. You got to cut your walks down. That's one thing the Orioles did last year. They didn't walk as many guys.
Yeah, no question.
And that's a free ride. And almost close to 40% of the game now is either a walk, a strikeout, or a home run. So that is something that you'd like to get your defense better, where the pitchers can share the ball with the infielders a little bit more.
Well, suddenly, if you've got Zunino, Sanchez, Iglesias, and Mullins in center field, that's a pretty good defensively
up the middle. Yeah, right.
Are we in agreement, Ross, that at $800,000, and while we love Hunter Harvey's, what he brings to the table, we love Bill and Tate, we love some of the other guys coming up, but maybe at $800,000, Shawn Armstrong proved one thing: he's capable of being a fairly consistent performer. He's not going to blow you away, but he's not going to blow you out of games either.
No, he's a guy that I saw him in Cleveland when he threw harder.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that is around the plate. And that's what you look for now, especially somebody can throw strikes, throw the ball over the plate and get ahead and make that quality pitch down or up and in or up in the zone, far enough out to where they chase it. If they do hit it, they'll pop it up. So he's got $800,000. That's what, $200,000 or $300,000 above the minimum. So that's a deal.
You can't get anybody much cheaper than that.
No, and I'm sure there's other guys out there that are going to be free agents. I don't think the free agent market is going to pay the money this time. Only to the very top guys.
The catchers that everybody wants are JT Realmuto. And then Yadier Molina is finding 4 or 5 teams, including the Yankees, that are interested in him, because the Cardinals are sort of fiddling with him, thinking they can get him cheap. And the Yankees are allowed to come in and blow him away with a 2-year deal.
Or the Mets, who knows?
Yeah, or the Mets.
The Mets are a team that's got some money to spend. But, I don't see any of those guys even going to a lower division team. They want to go somewhere and they win, and next year possibly you might have a full slate of games.
The third catcher that's available as a free agent is the White Sox second-string catcher, James McCann.
Yes.
And to me, if Realmuto leaves the Phillies, he's a good candidate there. If Molina leaves St. Louis, he's a good candidate there. He could also be the guy that the Yankees end up making.
Well, and remember, the Mets have got some money to spend.
Yeah, they do.
So
I'm anticipating they're going to make a big play for Real Muto.
Sure, absolutely, and they got the money, and he's going to be asking what 300 million or so.
Boy,
so
a lot of money to be asking,
and especially at this to get that kind of money now, where
in these times of uncertainty,
money is tight for teams. They're making it that way, and that'll be something. I think your top line guys, pitchers, infielders, outfielders are going to get the big bucks.
All right, before we dig into this, what the 2021 season is going to look like, I did want to ask you those three players that we just talked about: Renato Nunez, DFA'd, and Hanser Alberto, we think will be a roster casualty, as well as Pedro Severino. Are all three of them in the major leagues somewhere next year at the beginning of the season?
Hard to say. I mean, it's you got to look. The Orioles have got a lot of guys that are they're usable guys, but they're not your frontline people. And is there a place for them? Possibly. As a backup, but I mean, as a backup, you want to be a good defensive player.
Yeah.
If you're not a good defensive player, you can be a liability. Now, what's gonna be interesting is if the National League goes to the DH. That's gonna open up some stuff for people and some jobs.
All right. So Ross, and again, we apologize. We booked Dave Tremblay, the former manager of the Baltimore Orioles, tonight. We probably would have been better off calling Tim Tremblay, who doesn't spell his name the same way, but a rabid Orioles fan and a good friend of mine.
We go for a couple hours.
I know. We could have gone definitely
I know.
a couple hours. But let's dig into what you and I both feel that the 2021 season is going to look like. First of all, let's start with spring training. Do you anticipate teams will report to their minor league cities, or do you think that, and not only that, but what's the timing of when spring training starts? Is it February 12th? Is it March 1st? Is it March 20th? And do they report to their minor league cities? I mean, their spring training homes, or do they have spring training in their major league parks?
Yeah, I saw something today on MLB today that spring training was scheduled to start on time. Opening day is April 1st.
Right.
Now, is that a possibility? They seem to
think it, but I'm laughing at that.
I know.
What do they think? The virus?
Well, no, really. And where are you going? You're going to open up, and I mean, everything is a go right now. Okay. So I'm going, oh, great. But do you see that? Do you think that? No, I don't see it going away, especially Thanksgiving. There's a lot of people traveled. Christmas coming up.
Same thing's going to happen.
People are going to do the same thing. I hope. I guess there's another company that got the the vaccine out, and it's a couple weeks away. There's a possibility. I don't know if people are really feeling safe enough to take it, but I mean, they got it scheduled where they're giving it to the older people, and then the people in the nursing homes. People 75 and over, 70 and 65 and over, people with that are younger with underlying health issues. So there's a plan there. Now, will it work? Who knows?
I don't see how it works in time for this baseball season not to be impacted severely.
Well, after what happened this year with baseball, and now we're seeing it in football too. I mean, I don't know how you can shut spring training down with the week left in the season. And we talked about this before. Spring training is for the pitchers, basically.
Yeah.
The pitchers build up arm strength in the spring. They build it up the first few weeks of the season. Then you shut spring training down this year with a week or so to go in spring training, and you're down for 3 months.
All right. So I'm in agreement with what MLB is putting out there. Where do you think spring training will start and when?
I would have to say if things continue the way they are, there's no way you can start it in February.
Right.
I don't see how you can take the chance on starting it in Florida or Arizona, wherever your minor league facility is. I just don't see that happening with what's going on now. Now, the vaccine, if this thing, who knows what could happen. Yeah. But as it stands now, I can't see them playing a full 162 games. That's what they plan to do. But I would have to think possibly the middle of the year, if things continue the way they're going.
Well, I'm gonna paint you my picture. I think they start spring training somewhere between March 15th and April 1st. I think it's in the big league cities. Yeah. I don't think it's in the Sarasotas, Clearwaters, and all that. And I think the season starts roughly May 20th to May 30th, somewhere in there. And I think they're going to aim for about 110 games. That's what I think the season's going to look.
Then what do you do with the minor leagues? I mean,
I don't know what you're going to do with the minor leagues.
And that sets things back so much. And then they just announced today, as you told me about the MLB draft league.
Yeah,
which should be very interesting.
It's a very interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that there's a lot of iffy stuff there too that needs to be worked out. But I mean, that's on the back burner right now. But a lot of these kids and minor league players are missing out on a lot of important not only instruction and development. This is really a big thing for them. But this is what do you do? The virus is here. They're trying to take care of that first. But it's a tough time, and they're just learning as they go.
Yeah. But we're you're leaning toward agreeing more with me.
Sure.
Than with what MLB is saying right now.
Yeah.
I mean they're trying to calm their sponsors down.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. And really what they should be doing is having serious negotiations with the players union now. Their deal runs out at the end of the season.
I tell you, I think baseball is at a big crossroads right now, and the virus doesn't help it, but there's a lot of issues that need to be ironed out. I can go on and just tell you a lot of things that I think, that the game needs to address. And they're losing, the attendances went down every year since 2012. The games are longer, but that's not the big thing. It's the flow of the game. The games in the 70s were 2.5 hours. It's up over 3 hours right now. And there's several reasons why that, but I think things could be worked out. The game is, home run, base on ball, strikeout. That, it's up almost 40% of the game, compared to back in the 60s when it was, 25%.
We're off on a different tangent, but my prescription for speeding the game up is the electronic eye for a home plate umpire. I think if you have a consistency when pitchers and batters know, not from day one, but by playing with a electronic umpire for 30, 40 games, you're going to know what the strike zone is night in and night out. And I think it's going to force you to do some things a little quicker.
Well, I don't know about that, Stan, but I know one thing. The pitchers are throwing more pitches. They're throwing more wild pitches. They're hitting more batters. They're walking more guys. You get a pitcher to throw the ball in the same spot 2 times in a row, that's a shot in the dark. And you're teaching guys, pitchers now, they're doing away with starting pitchers, which is, that's gone by the wayside, which is awful. But yeah,
it was especially awful in the postseason.
Well, exactly.
Late in the postseason and World Series, where you're starting a guy that you're hoping to get 3 or 4 outs out of.
Really, but it's a power game, and it's actually, I think, boring for the people.
Yeah.
But you're teaching pitchers to throw as hard as they can and never throttle back. Yeah. Look at the injuries. The kids. You're teaching kids at 12 years old to do this kind of stuff, and they're having Tommy John surgery at 12. This is unbelievable. But everything is, it's a different mindset now, but it's almost like what happened during the spring training and the season this year. It's almost like we really don't care about the players. We just want to play football. Football. We don't care about you guys. Don't you can't hit. Don't hit. Before the season. Don't play the exhibition games. What happens with the COVID? The guys, there's more soft tissue injuries in the sport. It's plus they got the COVID. That's another thing. But this is something that really needs to be addressed. And it's you got people. It used to be that there's people in the game. The game hadn't changed, but the people have. And now the people in the game that have changed are changing the game. The game was not broken. The game wasn't broken. And to do some of the things that they're doing, I mean, the numbers don't lie what's going on. And analytics are one thing, and they can be used. And we all used them. I used them with a pencil and a piece of paper. That's a little bit different, but hey, the numbers are there. It's hopefully it'll change. Hopefully they'll get something worked out.
Hey, I would be remiss if before we left tonight, I didn't go back to something you said, because I remembered that you must have pitched to Johnny Bench.
Yes.
You said Bench and Gary Carter were the two guys, and I guess Dempsey, you probably threw to Dempsey.
Yep, Dempsey.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Bench, what he was like, because you pitched to him when he was young, right?
71, 2, and 3.
Right.
I was a young guy too. So he was
young, but
he was an older young guy.
He was 26-ish, 27.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. What was it like playing with him?
He was a guy that you got to understand. My first year in baseball was 69. First year at AAA was in 70. And I was in the big leagues in 71. 21 years old. I collected baseball cards. I had all these cards of these guys. I had cards of Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Willie McCovey. I played against these guys. Cepeda. I mean, just keep going. Now, all these big name guys. I had baseball cards. I'm in the big leagues with them. Al Kaline, and I just go on and on, and it was amazing. But with Bench, and I kind of called my own games, but we went over the hitters before the game, and it was he wanted to pitch here or there. You didn't hit that spot. He was going to fire the ball back at you, and and throwing to second base. You had to you had to duck or get out of the way.
The pitcher had to.
The
duck.
Pitcher did. The ball was right at your chest. I mean, he had I saw a thing the other day on Twitter, and they made a comment about catchers, and I'm going, I have never in my life, in the time I was in baseball, and that was from 69 to 2014, I have never seen anybody like Bench. I mean, he called the game, he threw, he blocked, he hit when you really needed the hit. He did. Carter was, similar. Bench was a step ahead of him.
Was Bench a great teammate? Would
Yeah,
you say that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Rose, me and my family and his first family were friends in Cincinnati because we lived there. Especially when I was here in Baltimore, we lived there, and they were great. Winning was the most important thing, and I can't imagine them playing in this day and age when some of these teams are tanking. They would lose their minds. I mean, and one of the stories I tell, winning was so important that I remember Tony Perez, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, all these guys in Cincinnati. I mean, Perez and Bench, they would bait the pitcher up early in the game. They would take a slider for strike 3, or they'd swing awful at it, and they'd walk back to the bench and said, "I'm going to get that pinch later on with men on base." And they'd get it, whammo, home run, double, but they would bait the pitcher up.
The thing we've heard about Bench for years, and then they used it in a commercial this year. I forget what the commercial was for. Did you ever see him hold 5 balls?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He could do that.
Huge hands.
Huge hands.
Just big hands. I mean, big old bat. But no, he was throwing to him, and he'd give a big backstop. He'd give a big, give that target, and that little bitty target, now all this big guy. He was great. Carter was the same way. I love you get real big guys, and they give that real big target, a high target. No, National League. I know National League, you kept the ball down. Then I went over to the American League, and to throw pitches that were up, and I go, gee, but he strike. Wait a minute, it was American League had the high strike. National League, you had to keep the ball down. I mean, you had to keep it at the knee, or it was a ball.
And how about Dempsey as a catcher?
Dempsey was a guy. I mean, he called the game, but he could throw and block. I mean, obviously he wasn't the guy that
Bench
those,
was,
or
Carter was.
Bench and Carter. I mean, those were the elite guys.
Those are Hall of Famers.
Dempsey's a guy who was an outstanding catcher.
He's like a Mike Zunino.
Yeah,
and what he could do for a pitching staff.
And he would get some hits when he needed, and he'd have a good series and stuff. But he was good to throw to. Andy Etchebarren was another guy that I threw to that was good. They knew the game. They knew what to do. If you went over the obviously we go over the hitters before the game and before the series with everybody, and if you knew the game, the situation, the hitter, the count, what certain guys did with this and that. I mean, that's these guys were on the ball. They knew exactly. They knew the hitters. They knew what. And I always, one of the questions I always ask, if I have to throw this guy a fastball, where do I throw it?
Mm-hmm.
So he don't hit it. And that was one of the things that they were always they knew what was going on, and they had a plan all the time, and they were able to change the plan if it wasn't working. So that's a big thing, to be able to do that.
This is number 48 for the Cincinnati Reds and Montreal Expos. Did you wear 48 for the Orioles?
My first year was 39, and then 39. George Stoller, the bench coach,
had 48. Yeah,
he had 48, and he'd give it to me, which was really.
So you ended up with an Oriole jersey.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Next week, when we do this show, we're going to be trying to get somebody that Ross worked with.
Yes.
A pretty big name pitcher, and I'm going to get the name out because you're going to try your best because he told you he'd do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You just got to get back to him. Dave Righetti may join us next week. And the two of them, he was the major league pitching coach for the San Francisco Giants when Ross worked with the Giants in the minor leagues in minor league capacity. All right, we're going to say good night now. I really appreciate you doing this with me, Ross.
Absolutely.
We'll try and reschedule Dave Tremblay for another time when we don't get a technical glitch.
Right.
But again, next Monday, which is December the 7th, we're going to make efforts to join with Dave Righetti next week. I thank you for tuning in. For Ross Grimsley, I'm Stan the Fan Charles. I'll see you not this Wednesday night. Gary Stein and I are taking off. Long story why. We were supposed to do, get a load of this. We were supposed to do the Zoom tomorrow night because Gary had you got to hear this. Gary had a UMBC basketball game that he does the play-by-play for. So I asked Terry Hazeltine if he would do Tuesday, December 1st, because Gary was working on the 2nd. And he said, sure, no problem. Well, they moved the Raven game to Tuesday.
Right, there we go.
So I go, Terry, can we change and do it after the first of the year? Now they've moved the game to Wednesday, but we're sticking with that. Terry's going to join us on January 6th.
Great.
But that does wrap us up for tonight. On December 9th, Gary Stein and I have Director of Marketing for Live Casino Hotel, Jake Joyce, to talk about this sports book that is coming to Maryland and whether or not it will be exclusively at the casinos. All right, for Ross Grimsley, I'm Stan the Fan Charles. Good night, everybody.